Hello, gentlemen. We need to talk about C++17. There's a new feature that I've discovered in C++17, and that is the directory iterator, which is a long-awaited feature in C++. We can now iterate through a directory and have proper file system support, which is very good, except for one thing. So first of all, this is what happens when you compile this very simple test program. All it does is it loops through the current directory and obtains all the files in the current directory and prints out their path. So as you can see, I've compiled and run this, and at the moment there are two files in this directory. There is one file which is a source file called filesystemtest.cpp, and another file which is the executable just called test. And so we have printed two things into the terminal, and they are filesystemtest.cpp and test. And they're all relative to the current working directory, so the paths are preceded by a dot and a /. Now, what do you suppose the following program does? So here, instead of converting my path to a string and then printing the string, I simply just cout entry.path. So there's no conversion to string anymore. We wouldn't expect anything particularly interesting to happen here, but we compile and run, and suddenly we find the output has got additional quotation marks around it. Now I understand the logic, quote unquote logic, as to why this has been done. This has been done so that if you were to cout something or use the stream insertion operator and send one of these path objects to a stream, and then you were to use the stream extraction operator, it would work the same, so that you wouldn't have problems with paths that have spaces in them being split into multiple different strings. That's the purpose of why this has been done. But the problem is, this is a problem that didn't need to be solved, because anyone who was writing a program would have by default assumed that if you have paths with spaces in, then you need to do something differently to treat those as special cases. Now we have a situation where the behavior is not as the developer would expect by default, because it has some arbitrary difference to how it works depending on whether you convert to a string first or not. And the behavior of the C++ language is now inconsistent in some way. And this is just annoying and difficult, and will probably lead to a lot of bugs being produced in code. I found out about this directory iterator today when I needed to loop through my current directory and essentially obtain a list of all the files and check whether they were images or not for this particular project that I'm working on. And instead I discovered some bizarre behavior, which then took me a few hours to investigate and fix. And the only way I was able to quote unquote understand this was by asking on Stack Overflow, putting a question on there and asking why the behavior isn't as I would expect. And in fact I asked whether or not this is a bug in C++17 for some weird reason. But no, it's not a bug. It's as the standards committee of C++17 intended, and it's just kind of weird and kind of annoying. And so I thought I'd make a video about how weird and annoying it was, just so that other people can find it weird and annoying as well. And then maybe in a future version of C++, they'll change it back so that it's actually logically consistent, instead of having this weird, arbitrary, different behavior because we didn't cast something to a string before sending it to cout.